Hello, explorers. Welcome to Reach the World. For 25 years, Reach the World has inspired youth to become curious, confident, and compassionate global citizens, all through virtual exchange. My name is Tim, and I'm so glad you're joining us for today's special event. As many of you know, our next big adventure aboard the scientific drilling vessel JOIDES Resolution is well underway. And let me be the first to welcome you back to the International Ocean Discovery Program's Expedition 400, also known as the Northwest Greenland Glaciated Margin Expedition. And there's great news with this expedition, as many of you know. The ship has left Reykjavik, Iceland. It has journeyed around the frozen waters, the chilly waters of the southern tip of Greenland in the North Atlantic Ocean, and is currently off the northwest coast of Greenland, where scientists have already begun conducting their research. Explorer Michelle Pratt is aboard the ship, also as you know, and she has been keeping us updated on her progress through her Reach the World virtual exchange articles. Today is the first of several opportunities to connect live with Michelle aboard the JOIDES Resolution. We're going to hear and see what she's up to, and of course, there will be plenty of time to ask her all your burning questions. Before we bring Michelle in, though, I want to also welcome the teachers and students who are joining us today, especially Mr. Gardner's class, who's joining us from Georgia. Hey, Mr. Gardner's class. They'll be back and joining us on camera in just a moment to ask Michelle some of their questions. If you're joining us via YouTube today, welcome also. Please use the chat bar to let us know you're here. You can let us know where you're joining from, and of course, share any questions you have for Michelle as we go. We'll fold them right into our conversation. I think with that, it is time to get this adventure underway. Michelle, let's bring you on camera. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Tim. Hi,
Hey.
Reach the World.
It is great to see you. How are you today?
Great to see you as well. I'm doing great. Gosh, I took a quick walk around outside this morning. It is absolutely warm, what I would call warm. We're about 2 or 3 degrees Celsius today. So that's, 34 to maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but it feels warm because it's not very windy. So I'm doing great today.
Fantastic. I gave a little preview in my introduction about where you are and what you're doing,
Awesome.
but it's been a while since we've talked to you live. Of course, you've been sharing your great articles on your Journey homepage at Reach the World, but can you sort of bring us back to your journey to the JOIDES Resolution and where you've gone and some of the things that you've done since the last time we spoke to you?
Absolutely. So yes, Tim, I think last we spoke, I was in Greenland with my fellow outreach officer, Beth, and we went to Greenland to learn a little bit more about the ice sheet that covers Greenland, to learn more about the place in Greenland where there's a lot of icebergs calving. So that is called Ilulissat and Disco Bay, for you geographers that want to look that up. It's a section of Greenland where a large portion of the ice sheet is coming off, calving into icebergs, and then those icebergs float in the ocean in Baffin Bay. And you might know that glaciers help to break up the land, and so little bits of rock and stones get trapped in there, crunched around as the glacier and iceberg move, and they float around and then they drop into the ocean. And that's what we're learning about here. So last time we spoke, I was in Greenland doing some pre-expedition work. And since that time, the entire crew arrived in Iceland about 3 to 4 weeks ago. We boarded the JOIDES Resolution. And then after a few days of bringing a bunch of supplies on board, like food and fuel and scientific equipment, we set sail, went around the southern part of Greenland, and it took about 7 days to transit from Iceland around the southern part of Greenland and up into northwest Baffin Bay, where we have been hanging out with the icebergs here for a couple weeks and working on our scientific drilling.
All right, that sounds like quite a journey just to get to the point where you're starting to collect the core samples from the bottom of Baffin Bay. Can you tell us about those 7 days? What's it like to be aboard a ship that's moving across the North Atlantic, rounding the bottom coast of Greenland, and just transiting to your research site?
Great question. It's such a unique experience to be on board a ship for a long duration of time. And it's a new experience for me. I've never been on a ship-based expedition for this long. So the first day or two, I have to admit, was a little bit rough because I tend to get a little seasick to my tummy. And so I took some seasickness medicine and, tried to do all the good things, but I did manage to get sick, which was not great. But after the first couple days, once my body acclimated to moving constantly, then I settled in a little bit more, and now I feel great. I haven't been sick in weeks. It was just those first couple days that were a little rough. So that transition time can be tough for a lot as we're getting used to the motion of being on the ship. One thing that gets a little tricky is just finding our way around the ship. So this is a large vessel, but the spaces that we live and work in are actually just a small portion of that vessel. So that, I think, made it a little bit easier for me to find my way around. You need to know the important things like where to get food, where your room is. And then the first several days, we also spent doing a lot of orientation with the science crew here on board so that we could learn about the lab spaces on board, the type of equipment that's on board, the places that we are and aren't allowed to go on the ship. There are several places that scientists are not allowed to go on the ship, actually, because the crew is running the operation. And so really important just to learn how to get around the ship, where the good spaces are that we can be and where we shouldn't be, which, for many of you, you've just started school. And it's kind of the same way. If you go to a new school, you need to find out where the cafeteria is, find where your classrooms are, make sure you know where your locker is or where you would hang your coat. So it's very similar type of experience to getting oriented onto the ship.
All right, fantastic. And where are you right now? I can see your amazing flag in the background, looking great on your wall, and I see some special equipment maybe hanging on the wall behind you. But can you tell us where on the JOIDES Resolution you are?
So I am physically sitting in the outreach office, and so it's just a small office that we share with another person, where we have a computer and some equipment so that we can do our outreach. And so, as you know, we've been posting a lot of blogs and some videos, and that, of course, takes computer equipment to get all that put together. I do have a super cool view, though, because right out there is the drilling rig. So let me just try and look quick. We're going to go here in just a second, but there's the office view, so it's not too shabby. So we'll get a little bit of a view outside, but yes, generally I'm sitting in an office, which looks like a lot of other offices, different places in the world.
All right, yeah, that's a great preview. We're gonna walk outside in just a little bit and get a closer look at that drilling rig. Michelle, can you tell us what a typical day is like for you aboard the JOIDES Resolution so far?
Sure, great question. So our days actually have a lot of routine, but then a lot of variety as well, ironically. So the ship operates 24 hours a day, so someone is always working. There are generally people who do the same job that are on opposite shifts. So like I mentioned, the other outreach officer, Beth, she works on the opposite shift to me. So she's working while I'm sleeping and vice versa. And so a typical day for me would be wake up, do the normal things you do when you wake up, brush my teeth, go get some breakfast, get a shower, get myself ready for the day. And then the first thing that Beth and I do is we coordinate our outreach for the day. So we look at our calendar and we look at the different tasks that we have ahead. We also ask around on the ship about interesting things that are happening, so that if there's some really cool discovery going on, or if there's an iceberg in the way that we might want to go take a photograph or video of, we can do that. So we generally kind of check in with what's going on the ship, and she tells me what happened in her shift. I tell her what happened in my shift, and then from there, every day is just a little bit different. Yesterday we had 3 different events, different outreach events. I Zoomed with a class in New Zealand that I taught at previously. I used to teach in New Zealand, and we Zoomed with a couple other classes in the United States. Today I've got this awesome Reach the World event. And, so some days we have live events. Some days we work on blog posts and social media. And but I think the one constant is just making sure that we're understanding what is happening scientifically on the ship so that we can make sure to communicate that in the best way possible.
All right, fantastic. Before I bring in the students from Kittredge in Georgia, I want to ask one more question of my own. What has been your favorite thing about this expedition so far? Has anything surprised you or delighted you, or something that you've been really enjoying?
I've really been enjoying the icebergs, which there have been several icebergs around us. There's icebergs always around us, pretty much. Some are far enough in the distance that it doesn't bother our operations, but some of them get a little bit close, and they're really beautiful to look at. They're massive, and and then there's sometimes little smaller bits, but often we've had a few massive icebergs that are just incredible to see in person. Ironically, I like them, but they are not so good for our expedition. So for scientists, that means we have to stop our drilling operation. So that isn't so great for us scientists. And, but I like them. That's been an absolute delight for me just to witness these massive, massive icebergs floating here in Baffin Bay.
It must be remarkable to see the forces at work that have created the sediments, that have brought the things to the bottom of the sea that you're there to study in the first place. It's been going on for millions of years.
Very much, very much. It's really interesting to see in person.
Fantastic. Well, I have a great class of students at Kittredge Magnet School here, and I want to give them a chance to ask you some questions before we venture outside of your office onto the deck of the JOIDES Resolution. And if we're lucky, I don't know if there are any nearby icebergs today, but at least we could see the waters where the icebergs tend to float. So Kittredge Magnet School, hello, how are you? Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning. It's great to see you. Is anybody there brave enough to step up and ask the first question to Michelle aboard the JOIDES Resolution? Great. We've got a hand right in the front. Go ahead.
There you go. Go ahead. How big are the biggest iceberg you've seen?
Ooh, how big's the biggest one? Oh, you're going to tax my memory here. The biggest one, hold on one second. I think I have, I can't really pull it up that quickly. I want to say it was 34 meters wide by 93 meters long. So does anyone play football or soccer? And do you know how, you could do some math and figure out just how much of a football field or a soccer field that is, what the equivalent distance is. It's massive. And one thing to know about icebergs, maybe you know this already, is that the part of the iceberg that we see above the water is not the largest part. So there's about 10 to 15% of an iceberg that's above the water. So if it's that huge above the water, it is massive underneath the water. There's so much more ice that floats below. It doesn't float, but how come I can't come up with that word? There's so much more ice that's underneath the water that we can't even see.
All right, great. Fantastic first question. Let's go to our next question from Kittredge. Go ahead.
Where are you guys going after Iceland and Greenland?
Oh, so the entire expedition takes place in northwest Greenland, in Baffin Bay. So essentially we went from Iceland, we came up to our research site, which is in northwest Baffin Bay. We stay here and at 7 different sites for about 6 weeks, and then we go back to Reykjavik, Iceland, and then we all fly home. But I'm going to stay in Iceland for about 4 days and relax after the expedition because that seems fun.
Yeah.
All right, excellent question. Let's keep it rolling. Go ahead.
Hi. When you drill, how does the sand feel? Does it feel like rock hard, or does it feel more like sandy?
Oh, that is a great question. And it depends every time. So each drill section can be different because we're going through the layers of the earth, right? So we're continuing to go down and down and down further, which goes back into older layers of the the sediment layers. And so each layer can look a little different. Some look a little sandy. A lot of what we've been getting is clay-like sediments. And so if anyone does Play-Doh or modeling clay, it's the type of stuff that I just want to pick up and make like a shape out of it, because it looks a lot like Play-Doh or something that you could carve into like a cup or a saucer or something like that.
Fantastic question. We are going to go into the lab and see some of those core samples in our next live stream event with Michelle. So stay tuned for that. All right, next question. Go ahead.
What kind of rock and sediment do you guys find while you're drilling?
What kind of rock and sediment? Ooh, that sounds like a very science-based question. Let's see. I will have to get back to you on the specific types, but I do know that there are some that are very fine grain, like that sediment, and then there are some rocks that we've been getting that look kind of like a granite countertop. But I will get back to you on the exact types of sediment.
I love it. We're diving right into the real heavy geology, which is great. It's the whole point of the expedition. That's a great question. I see we've got our next student ready to go. Go ahead.
How many people do you need to make this all work? And what are the different jobs on the ship?
That is an awesome question, and I definitely have that answer. We have 117 people on board. And and of those 117 people, there are at least 21 different nations represented among all of the people working on the ship. The categories of people that are required to do this work are scientists. You probably know that part, right? But there is a really important group of people who actually run the ship. So the people who run the engine room, the people who run the drill rig, and help to pull up this core. They are professionals who do this work all the time. And so we're very grateful that they know how to run the ship, because we do not want a group of scientists trying to actually run the ship. They're professionals at the job that they're doing. There's also a group of people who take care of some of our daily needs, like food and laundry and cleaning. And that's really awesome, because I know I love good food. Who likes good food? We all like good food, right? And super important. You want to be eating some good food when you're out at sea for months. And then there's the fourth group is a really important group of people who are the science techs. They're also scientists as well, and their job is to make sure that the processing of the core is done consistently. So they work in teams, and so like this expedition, there's one team of techs that are working, then they get 2 months off, and another team comes in and they get 2 months off. But they work consistently on the ship, so they are able to keep accurate record keeping. And you probably know that from like your science notebook. It's really important that scientists keep accurate notes. So they're really very important to keeping those accurate records, because these cores get stored and saved for years and years so that scientists can go back and request records from before. So they help keep everything moving in the core processing and make sure that we have accurate scientific information and records.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Great question. Let's take one more question from Kittredge before we go outside and take a look around. Go ahead.
Okay.
Has there ever been a time where when you're drilling, you've gotten like stuck because something's too hard for the drill to go through?
Ooh, that is a great question. So that's another person who's on board. There's a person on board who runs some special equipment called logging equipment that helps to measure the actual properties of the hole. So learning what the hole is made up of, different to the core. But that person's other job is helping us get unstuck if we get stuck. And that hasn't happened yet on this expedition, but it does happen from time to time on expeditions. And yes, because this crew works at this job very regularly. They come onto the ship every other expedition. They are super, super good at different techniques for getting us unstuck. So the drillers will work at getting it unstuck, but if not, then this other special person has to come in and use some other equipment to get us out of the hole. That's really important because we are tethered to the bottom of the ocean. Bye, Kittredge, you're switching classes. I'll see you next time. We are tethered to the bottom of the ocean by this pipe. So if you imagine a ship, we're like stuck to the ocean through this pipe. So if we can't get unstuck, that is a major, major problem. So that person's job is super important.
All right. And you had mentioned a little bit earlier, Michelle, that icebergs, though beautiful, present a little problem. Can you just sort of link the two together? Why would icebergs be a problem if you were sort of tethered or stuck to the bottom of the ocean by through the drill?
Absolutely. So icebergs, as most people probably know, are not great for ships. So, you know, if an iceberg was to hit us, the JOIDES Resolution is an ice strengthened ship. So we could take a little bump, but we really can't when we are tethered to the bottom of the ocean because we can't move very much. So by being stuck onto the bottom of the ocean, it means that the icebergs present an even greater danger to us, and it takes hours to actually pull up all of that pipe. So we have some ice navigators who are on board with us. They are constantly monitoring icebergs using radar and using visual methods, and they're tracking and plotting the path of those icebergs. And then they have a radius of time in which we might need to move. So depending how deep we are into the ocean and what type of drill equipment is down there, our window of time might be greater or might be smaller in which we need to actually start pulling that pipe up and get out of there before the iceberg was to cross our path. And we did that 2 nights ago. There was an iceberg that it didn't hit us. Don't be worried about that, but it did cross over exactly where we had been. So it was very important that we pulled up all that pipe and moved out of the way so that the iceberg could do its thing and we weren't in the way. And then we just came right back and set our pipe back down and started working again.
All right. Excellent questions from Kittredge. Thank you very much, Kittredge. I'm going to move you backstage for just a minute while Michelle takes us on a little tour around the outside of the ship. Let's wander a little bit, shall we, Michelle?
Are we ready? Okay.
Yep, you go ahead.
Great. Okay, so before I go outside, I have to get some safety equipment on. So these are some safety glasses, and I need my hard hat. It's always good to wear your safety equipment because I like my head. It's just fine the way that it is. It does not need to get bumped or bruised or knocked around or anything like that. So yeah, come on, Tim. Come on, the Reach the World. Let's go outside. Often I put on my big heavy coat when I come outside, but as I mentioned, today is just really pretty warm as far as I'm concerned. So here behind me is a view, and I'm going to turn around and see if we can get any view of icebergs. I do not see any on the horizon currently on this side of the ship, so which is good news for the ship. We're drilling this morning, so that means that we're not having a huge problem with icebergs. But let's come around here, and I'll pause for just a second and look way up at this big drilling rig. And we're going to go up top. Let's go up together, and I will show you what this drilling rig looks like. One thing that happens on a ship is you get a lot of exercise. You do lots of climbing of stairs, which is good. It's good to stay healthy. All right, so let's come through here. This section, I'll just pause for a minute here. So here in this room is where the core first comes in. So you can see there's kind of this big line of holders here. And so the core comes in, comes down here. The techs set it on here. They have some equipment that they use to measure and mark the core so that they have accurate lengths, and they get it all packaged up. They cut it into segments, and then they take it into the lab. And I think next time we're going to go in the lab, right, Tim?
Yes, that's right. Let's save that for next time.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's come on upstairs. So the core comes through here, and I'm going to take you up here, up these stairs where we can actually get a nice overview of the drilling platform, which is a pretty cool view. My dad worked in kind of a similar operation for years and years, so my dad was super thrilled to get to see how this drilling operation takes place. Okay, so you might be able to see this pipe is rotating as it is going down into the ocean floor. So currently they've sent a pipe down and they're collecting some additional sediments. And if I pan up, you can see just how high this whole drilling rig is. So this entire apparatus is set up just to be able to help this drill pipe go up, go down, collect core sediments, bring those core sediments back up, and bring them onto the deck, and then it goes back down and keeps collecting the next sample. Some people also wonder how we store that much pipe on deck, because we have miles of pipe. And if you see way out in this whole section stores a lot of pipe. I only see actually 2 pipe segments on the deck right now. So we're drilling pretty deep currently because a lot of the pipe is in use. All right, so Tim, what questions might you have for the drilling deck?
Great. Yeah, I just want to reiterate something you said, that the dark, from our view, the dark metal line that's going down in the background that's spinning is the actual drill shaft that is currently operating to drill many hundreds, if not more, meters beneath the sea. And you can see we can see in the
that one.
Yeah, there we go. Yep. Exactly. You can just barely, if you look really closely, you can see it rotating and bearing down into the bottom of the sea, which is really cool. This is an active expedition, an active collection of sediments and cores from the seabed, which is really cool to see. And we can see too in the background, Michelle, there are a couple people working on the deck. What would their jobs be at this point?
Oh, sure. Their jobs are running this whole drill equipment. So you can see several red pieces of equipment on the deck. I'll pan around. All of these pieces of equipment help to move this pipe. So as the pipe comes up, comes down, they move these different machines into place to help facilitate that happening. So all of the people that you see walking around, their jobs are to help keep this drill operation going. They move a lot of pipe.
All right. So cool to see. So cool to see so many things working together to achieve these, to collect these really hard to collect samples that tell us so much about our history. I'm going to turn things back over to our friends at Kittredge. Just bring them back on and see what questions they have about what you just showed them. All right,
Great.
Kittredge, hello. I think we may have some new students here after that switch of students. If you have a question, Mr. Gardner will send you up to the front and you can ask your question directly to Michelle. Please go ahead.
What's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of my job? That's a great question. I'll have to think about that for a second because I actually really like this job. My whole job on board is to talk about science, do exactly what I'm doing here, share that with students around the world, and to help take really complex scientific ideas and translate them into examples and terminology that helps make sense for students. And I really, really like that part of the job. I think probably the hardest part has to be just managing the schedule. Like I mentioned to the last class, someone's on shift 24 hours a day. So every single day we're working, and we're working 12-hour shifts. So as much as I love every aspect of the job, the days do get long. Imagine going to school for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. People get tired.
All right, great question. Yeah, that I guess begs one more follow-up question, Michelle, before we turn it over to the next student. Do you have weekends?
Weekends exist, as in Saturday and Sunday do not drop off the calendar, but days off don't exist.
Okay.
Nope, we work every day.
All right, great. All right, go ahead, Mr. Kittredge class.
While drilling, do you ever come across wildlife?
Ooh, do we come across wildlife? We have not seen very many whales at all this expedition, but we do see seagulls every day. But that's about the only wildlife that we're seeing in this expedition. The seagulls, and there might. Oh, I see a few. I see a few out in the ocean. It'll be hard for you to see them on camera, but they're hanging out every day. They're out on this side.
All right, great question. I hope I'll keep my fingers crossed for you, Michelle, that you see some whales. That would be very exciting.
Thanks. We would love to see them. And actually, for wildlife, there are some special runs that we do called logging runs, where we send some special equipment down to measure the properties of the actual hole. When we're doing that, we don't want to see wildlife, because they're also doing some loud knocking and pinging noises. And so there are some wildlife observers that are up on deck when we're doing that, and they're watching to see if there's any whales or other species that might be disturbed by that activity. And if we see that, then we have to stop. So I want to see whales, but not when we're trying to log.
All right, great. Next student, go ahead, please.
How long does it take to go from Iceland to Greenland?
It took us 7 days. It was a long time on the ship just to transit around Greenland, around the southern point of Greenland, and up to northwest Greenland, where we are right now.
Great question. Let's keep it rolling. Next one, go ahead.
Who funds the expedition?
Can you repeat it? I didn't hear it all.
Who funds the expedition?
Oh, who funds? Like, who pays for the expedition? That is a great question, because science doesn't happen for free. And so on this expedition, we are an international expedition. So there are several different countries who have contributed money to help this expedition happen. The United States contributes some money to help this operation. And on board this time, we have people from China, people from Japan, from India, from Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, New Zealand. I think that's everyone that's on this expedition. So all of those countries have helped contribute money, and they also send scientists to help work on this expedition. Great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, fantastic. Any more questions, Mr. Kittredge? All right, I see somebody. Go ahead.
Do you have any pets or animals on board?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I will take a picture of the pet ball. No one actually has physical pets with them, but there's a wall in one of the stairwells. So as we go down towards the galley where we get food, there's a pet wall where everyone puts up their pictures of pets, and that's a way that we get to remember all the cute little furry creatures at home.
Okay.
What's the rockiest soil you guys have ever hit or drill?
What's the longest?
No, rockiest.
Rockiest?
Yeah.
Ooh, that is not on this expedition. So on this expedition, we're looking for a lot of glacial sediments. So glaciers carve up the land into very, very small bits. So we don't find that many large rocks, but we did find one the other day that was about 12 centimeters, and everyone was super duper excited because it's the first big rock we've actually seen.
What's the coolest thing you guys have found while drilling?
The coolest thing, I'm going to say that would depend on which scientist you ask. So each scientist comes out here with their own specialty. And there are some scientists who are really interested in these things called forams. They are small little microfossils that are about the size of a grain of salt. And so when we find forams, that scientist gets really excited. When we find stones, a different scientist gets really excited. There's also a group of scientists on board who are studying magnetism. And so they're studying and measuring the different magnetic poles of the cores, as we go back in time, so the further we drill down. So when they find something where there's what they call a reversal in the magnetism, they get really excited. So it's hard to answer that question because so many different scientists get excited about different finds.
Yeah, great question and great answer. And we're having just a little delay in your signal, Michelle, and I think it's a good reminder of just how far away you are and what a unique place you are. We can still hear you. Your video's just frozen a little bit. If you wanted to sort of make your way back down towards the office, we can keep the questions coming.
Can do.
All right, Mr. Kittredge's class, go ahead. I think she can hear you all right.
What is the relationship between glaciers and sediments?
Perfect question. Okay, so glaciers, the job of glaciers, nope, let me start again. So glaciers act like rivers of ice. And so as a glacier is moving along the land, they are carving up bits of land. So if you imagine like a large mountain, they're just coming along and scraping that mountain down so that it becomes actually a nice big valley. But along with that, they're carving up the land so that they take big boulders and make them into small stones and make them into little powdery sediments, kind of like sand. And so as the glaciers, back inside here 1 second, then I'll finish my sentence. There we go. Okay, so as the glaciers are doing that work, then the glaciers end up breaking off as icebergs, and the icebergs transport all of that sediment and those small bits of rocks. And then as the glaciers melt, they drop all those into the ocean floor, and then we go and pull those up in our course. So that's exactly what we're after, is glacial sediments from the last time that Greenland was in a warming cycle.
Excellent. Fabulous question. Great. Mr. Kittredge, any more? Oh, fantastic. Go ahead.
What did you study in college?
Me? I actually studied business the first time I went to college, and then I went to college a second time and I became a teacher. So I taught world geography for quite a while in Alaska. And so I do not have a science background. But one thing that's an amazing superpower of teachers is helping to explain things to students. So that's my job on board here, is to help explain science and the drilling operation to students and the general public.
Great. Mr. Kittredge, why don't we do one more question? And I have a question for Michelle about a big event that she recently celebrated.
What's your favorite part about your job?
My favorite part of my job is exactly this, getting to share the world, this expedition, and science with students. It's really super fun.
Great question. Michelle, I want to just ask you a question. I know you recently celebrated a big milestone in anybody's life, your birthday aboard the ship.
Yeah.
What was it like to celebrate your birthday at sea? And did you get to do anything special during your day?
Yes, thank you. It was kind of cool to celebrate my birthday at sea. The baker on board actually made this really super amazing cake for me. He made a layer cake. And so if any of you've made a cake, you know that you start at the base layer and you add cake, frosting, right? As you build the layer. And he made me a 5-layer cake because it was my 50th birthday. So that represented each of the decades of my life up till now. And it also kind of represents the way that we are drilling for sediments. So if we think about going back down through the sedimentary layers, it's kind of like going back down through the layers of the cake to learn about Earth's history. And so it was kind of a normal day in some ways. But we all took a break in the middle of the afternoon, had cake, sang happy birthday. They put a really goofy flamingo hat on my head, and we got to be silly for a little bit. And yeah, so it's nice to take a little bit of a break, but you still don't get a full day off, even if it's your birthday.
That sounds like a really unique way to spend a birthday, especially a milestone birthday. I'll bet you'll never forget that.
No, very special.
I want to give Miss Stevens' class, who I know is joining us from Kentucky, a last chance to add any questions they might have in the chat, as well as anyone else who's watching the live stream. If you have any final questions for Michelle, please just drop them in the chat and we'll work them in. Michelle, I want to touch base on a couple of things. You have been writing some great articles about lots of things happening in your life, your journey to the ship, a lot of the things we talked about today, your first weeks aboard the ship. We have the link to your journey homepage right here for anybody who needs a reminder about how to access those articles. Michelle's been posting photos. Most recently, she introduced us to the very baker she just referenced, who made her that wonderful birthday cake. So if you want to see the cake and you want to learn about what it means to be a baker on an expedition ship, a really cool job, go and check out Michelle's article there. And there are many more to come. I just want to put another little plug in too for any teachers who are watching and want to follow the whole expedition, not to mention get their own virtual exchange flag, like Michelle is flying proudly behind her and our friends in Georgia are flying behind them. Make sure that you register today and we'll make sure that you are on the first to know about future live stream events. We're going to be coming back to Michelle very shortly. And this time, now that we've seen the outside of the JOIDES Resolution and the drilling platform, I think we're all really eager to see what is being pulled up from the bottom of the seabed. So that's going to be our next stop in the live virtual exchange realm. But before we wrap up, we have about 2 or 3 more minutes. Are there any burning final questions from our friends at Kittredge Magnet School?
Let me just add one thing, Tim, before I take a question. So between now and the next time we have a live event, there are several books available on the JOIDES Resolution website that are excellent books. Those of you who like graphic novels, raise your hand if you like a graphic novel. Raise your hand if you like really good illustrated books. There's several on there. And one that's a great graphic novel that has some really good worksheets that goes with it as well is called How to Read a Rock. So as we go into the lab next time, that could be a really fun book to read so that you learn a little bit more about the work that's done here on the JOIDES. So some good educational resources.
All right, fantastic. Any final questions? I see a couple questions in the chat from Kittredge. I can ask one of those, or nope, we've got a student who's ready to go, so go ahead.
Have you ever found any animals in the glaciers you digged up?
Oh, yes, but they're like little microscopic animals. So the forams that I was mentioning before, they are just like the size of a grain of salt. Those used to be living animals. And that's actually one of the ways that scientists can tell how old the layers are, because the different types of animals that they find, these little microfossils, those animals like to live either in warmer environments or colder environments. And so that helps the scientists to age or date the sediment layers, because they say, oh, these little organisms used to live in the warm environment, these lived in cold environments. So they're all like little bitty microfossils. We don't find any large animals.
Fantastic question to end on. You. It's a great segue into our explorations into the lab aboard the JOIDES Resolution and all the great things that are coming up. I think I may have seen one more face on the edge of the screen. Is there one more question? All right, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Have you guys experienced any severe weather?
Not yet, which is interesting. I was expecting it to actually be colder than it is. And so we've had a few, a couple really windy days, but that's about it. And the seas were a little rough at the beginning, but it's, I've been surprised. I've lived in the north and south most of my life in polar environments, and I've been pretty surprised at almost how warm it is, actually. Maybe the worst weather is coming, I don't know, but not yet.
All right, fantastic questions. Kittredge, you are the best. I can tell you've been following Michelle's articles very closely. Excited to include you in future live stream events. But that is all the time we have for today. Michelle, thank you so much for this great chat and the ship tour. Thanks to our entire YouTube live stream audience for joining us. Teachers, as I said, you can be the first to know about upcoming video calls and articles from Michelle and the Northwest Greenland Glaciated Margin Expedition by registering your class today. And we've got flags to send to you, so make sure you get yours right now. Our journey continues over the coming weeks and throughout this virtual exchange, but for now, that is it. So let's all say goodbye and thank you to Michelle. Michelle, have a good week.
Thank you. Thanks,
You're
Michelle.
welcome. Thank you for your awesome questions.